Many people don't know that early on,
Mm.
before digital became digital, you were called the Spice Regime, and y'all were actually, wearing berets and trying to be like a Black Panther type group until Public Enemy came along. So maybe you can speak on that, and especially with Pac, because one of the things we know about Pac, at one point he was getting ready to go to Atlanta to head up what would have been a baby chapter of the
The New
Panthers.
African Panthers. New
Yeah.
African Panthers. Yeah. Well, my route is 1981. We had the Master Blasters, which evolved into the Four Horsemen, which was me, Kenny K, Doc P, and Scooby D. Two of them who have passed already. Rest in peace, Kenny K and Scooby D. Doc P and myself are the only ones still alive representing it. And then we changed our name to the Chill Factor. And at that point, me and Kenny split the group in half, and we came to California. And when we got to Oakland, Kenny was always saying, like, the word flavor, fresh, everything, food references were in hip-hop a lot. So he was like, man, we're going to put some spice in this hip-hop game. And I said, well, let's call it the Spice Regime. And that was the last name we were before Digital Underground, true. And, yep.
But
But
you
yeah,
only
our thing was, we wanted to do something for the struggle, because in the '80s that was the feeling. That was the feeling. You had, the crack wars were winning, the cheap drugs they infiltrated in the hood, COINTELPRO, it panned out for the FBI. They got us. They got us hooked on the crack. They got us. A lot of musicians were hooked on heroin. They got the cheap drugs in the street, and now the uprising, or I should say the progress, the positive progress for the inner city had been interrupted, and you could feel it by the late '80s. That's when groups like N.I.G.G.A.Z. and Public Enemy were sprouting up left and right. King Son, young black teachers, and just so many conscious-oriented groups were coming out back then, because you could feel it, you could see it in the street, you could see all the crackheads, the crime was out of control. But as hip-hop brought that around, especially hats off to Ice Cube too, man. I mean, NWA and them, they predicted the police brutality. You could pretty much say they predicted the Rodney King incident, letting people know how bad it was. That's what they meant by F the police. They didn't mean like all the police. They meant those ones that were just wreaking havoc,
right.
But so by the time we got our deal as Digital Underground, most of those slots had got soaked up pretty much. And I always like to stand out. I'm a cat who likes to go left when the whole herd goes right. And that being that it had become normal par for hip hop to speak revolution, then that's when I felt like, well, maybe I'll abandon that and do something else that comes natural to me too, which is goofing off. I've always been a funny cat. I've always, been into Bootsy Collins and Bernie Worrell and Benny Hill. Bootsy Collins, what's the dude's name? I get no respect. Rodney Dangerfield.
Right.
A lot of people went into Humpty Hump, and Rodney Dangerfield was one of them. Morris Day, yes, I want some perfection. Get it up, all that stuff. So, that was as strong in me as the revolutionary side was. So I was like, wow, if we're not going to be the last poets, if we're not going to be James Brown, I'm black and I'm proud, then maybe we'll be Funkadelic, free your mind and your ass will follow. Maybe we'll be Bootsy's Rubber Band, and maybe we'll go in that direction, hip-hop wise,
I hear
And
that.
it worked out. As it turns out, I'm more of a clown than I am a political leader. At my core, my family's goofy growing up. When I think about it, as a young black teenager, of course I wanted to be down with the struggle. That's when you want to be on the front line, you know what I mean? Where they at? But as I got older, around 25, 26, I had calmed down a lot. And by the time, Digital Underground was on its second or third album, I felt like we had did the right thing by opening up humor and sexual prowess to our material,
Right, but you still done a number of records that always kind of kept it in there, and the fact that Pac was a part of your group helped bring that as well. Can you talk a little bit about
Exactly,
that?
yo. If Pac wasn't in Digital Underground, I would have felt a bigger need to make a lot of statements like that. I would have felt like my African Americanism, my social struggle, my humanitarianism isn't showing enough. And I would have wanted to do something that way. But by having Tupac there and by working on his solo records and stuff, I felt like, that mouth in my mind was getting fed. You know what I mean? And we were doing something for the struggle just by working with Pac. And then every now and then we try to shed a little light, even on the Digital Underground album. We would do something halfway political, but, we kept it fun and games because it's more of a variety show that way. You got your CNN, that was Tupac. You got your Comedy Channel, that was Digital Underground. You got your HBO Late Night, Sex in the City, that's Freaky Deaky, Money B, and on and on. We even had our Hustler Channel with Gold Money, and then we had our Cypher, freestyle rap and hip hop, Battle You Anytime corner provided by young MCs like Essential and Sophia, and helping Humpty Hump with the Jesters activities. You had Yuck Mouth and Numbskull come through.
So there was a lot of folks, and we often forget that.
It's probably a lot of things, but he was really an intellectual kid. He took on thug life because he wanted his message. He didn't want to speak down to anyone. He had a little extra curriculum at the Baltimore School of Arts. He was a very well-read brother. Even at 18 years old, when I had met him, he had already read all of these legendary books, and he had already read the 48 Laws of Power. He had already read the whole Machiavelli story. He was reading, when we were in the studio with him, he was reading Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, that ex-government CIA person who went left and defected and snitched on a lot of the plans that the government had up to control the people. Pac was reading that book when I met him. He was in the studio with that, something like 91. He was a very well-read cat, but he looked at Chuck D, and Chuck D was one of his idols. And he looked at Chuck D, and he was like, cats are starting to sag their jeans. We starting to rock these tattoos. We getting wild with the blunts. The people who come to the Chuck D and the KRS-One rallies, they already got their Quran in their hand, or their Bible, or their seven lessons, and they're already straight. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They already are intellectuals. Pac noticed that the people he wanted to reach, they didn't even read. They didn't go to the meetings and the rallies. They didn't have nothing. They were the have-nots, the straight up, the thugs in the hood, the cats who grew up without parents and just grew up watching television only, and those are the cats he wanted to reach. So he knew he couldn't do it like Chuck D and KRS-One did it. He couldn't be a vegetarian. They wouldn't understand him. He couldn't wear his jeans tight on his butt like Chuck D did. He had to sag his pants. He couldn't have been straight with non-alcohol and no drugs because he didn't want to speak down to anybody. He wanted to speak eye to eye and say, look, I have the same problems you have. Okay? I got the police chasing my ass too. But hear me out. It could be a better world if we treat these sisters a little better. You know what I'm saying? And if we treat each other with kindness, if we lift each other up one day, I know it'll be heaven sent, but we ain't ready to see a black president. Woo! I wish Pac had lived to see Obama.
Right.
He would have loved that. He wouldn't believe it.
He'd probably be on Obama's case too.
Yo, what's up with the health care? You said everybody. That's not everybody.
I hear that. So we often forget that because we get overshadowed that with the sensationalism that there was a method to his madness and that he was much more well thought than it was just acting off of pure emotion.
Right, exactly. It wasn't just emotion. By the time the camera showed him spitting in the camera and acting stupid and yelling and fighting, that was after the fact. That was way after he had been shot a couple of times, incarcerated. He's running around with death row. They pumping him, patting him on the back. You heard what he said, Pop? What you gonna tell him? What you gonna tell him? They pumping him up like people in his corner, sending him in the ring, you know what I mean? So you've seen a very animated, exaggerated, hurt, bitter, betrayed Tupac in those last few pictures of him spitting at the cameras, because the judges, they were spitting on him. You know, he felt like the cases that he was getting handled and the justice he was getting dealt, they were spitting on him, so he was spitting back. But if you look at Tupac at any other time, and he was only on death row for 9 months, but if you look at him any other time, he was in the music industry for 5 years. Look at him any of those other times. From before we met him, when he had Strictly Dope was his group, with Ray Love and Dizzy on turntables. Before that even, when he was MC New York with Mouse Man was his right-hand man. Mouse Man was Dana Smith was his right-hand man, and he was making videos with Jada back when they were 15 years old. Look at him at that period. Look at him at any time during the 3-4 tours he did with Digital Underground. Look at his first solo albums, you know, Tupacalypse Now and all the way up to All Eyes on Me, and you will see he was not a madman. So it burns me and it makes me mad when I meet people in the street and I meet these young kids and they all backwards and they not in school and they not going to work and they just standing there on the corner or they standing there grinding weed out of their mom's garage and they got all these tattoos that say money over and they turn that one cigarette over in their Newport pack. And they too young, and they already telling me, hey, Shock, you need anything before the show? Yo, I got them Rolls, man. I got them purple Mitsubishis and them yellow Rolls Royces and talking about X-Pills and These little 14-year-olds. I'm like, yo, man, you really, really are messing your life up. I'll be surprised if you're still free by the time you're 30. Man, I'm thugging it out like Pac told me, man. Money over man, blah, blah, blah. And that... it makes me want to shake them little kids and be like, man, I just want to just knock the out of them sometimes and be like, man, you missing it. You missing the whole message. You only catching the thug side of Pac. Pac only threw that little bit in so people would relate to him so y'all wouldn't turn away and be like, that's just another goody two-shoes trying to tell me to straighten up and he don't know my problems. Pac did know your problems. But don't just stand there and throw your life away thinking you being like Tupac. No, shorty. No, Pac was in the library. Pac was knowing his history. Pac's family was revolutionaries. You know what I'm saying? Pac had real problems. He had real problems. His family was incarcerated. His mom was trying to get off crack after being bombed by FBI, after having their offices bombed. They had reasons to smoke cigarettes, and they had reasons to talk about stress and say they were stressed out. You know, they weren't just 14-year-old kids doing it because they thought it was cool. When Tupac was 14 years old, his mind was beautifully open. He was a very well-spoken, very optimistic young teenager, and you can see that in some of those documentaries that have his early, high school footage out. You can see he was a bright-eyed, well-behaved, you know what I'm saying? He wasn't just wild for no reason, youngster. That's what they don't understand. Tupac loved women. Wasn't no money over. He loved and respected women. You can hear it in his lyrics.
So, man, taking it back a little bit, a lot of people don't know, man, that you and Pac was roomies on the road, man.
Right.
With DU, like, first of all, without Pac, you got some crazy ass stories about the road. Man, tell us one of the funnier stories that involve you and Pac.
Being on the road?
Yeah.
Just, just that he needed weed. So he like weed didn't really get him high, it made him normal. So if he didn't have weed, he was irritable and just acted, he wasn't pleasant to be around.
Okay.
He was cranky and just whatever. So because we were roommates and I didn't feel like dealing with him all the time, I would, even though I didn't smoke, I was always trying to find weed so that he wouldn't get on my nerves. You know what I mean? So as much as he was looking for weed every city he went to, I was trying to help him get weed so we didn't end up beating each other's brains out.
Right.
So it's just a few crazy stories just of me trying to help him get some weed and just him being Tupac.
Right. It's funny, man, because you being from Oakland, man, and Pac moving out there to Marin, and then ended up coming to hang in Oakland. And a large part, you actually introduced him to the town, right?
Right, for sure. Most definitely. He was out in Marin City, but when they started coming out, well, they got signed to TNT Records, which was Asian Gregory's label, same label that we were signed to.
Right.
But as a group, and while they were recording, when they used to come out, because we were, closest in age, the closest in age, I should say. And my house was in the hood. I had the turntables, and my spot was like the kicking spot. So we used to come through.
You sound like you got further away, bro.
Say what?
You sound like really hollow, like you got further away from the phone or the speaker or something.
Nah, I'm talking the same way.
Okay.
So yeah, when he come out, it started off with, where can I get some weed out here? And I'll take him to 13th Ave or, wherever it was, and get his weed. Then all of a sudden, he would come out before Ray and them, sometimes even when they didn't have sessions, just to kick it. And so I ended up showing him and taking him out and introducing him to a lot of people in Oakland as he got familiar before he moved. And even when he moved to Oakland, I lived by the lake at the time. This is after we popped off and guys got their money or whatever. Right. I had a spot by the lake. And when he moved to Oakland, I lived on the lakeshore side of the lake. And he moved and got an apartment on the Grand Ave side of the lake, which is right on the other side of the lake.
Right.
So we were basically neighbors, even when he did move to Oakland. So we were just always together for the most part. So as far as his first introduction and hanging out and being in Oakland was through me, or
right. No,
more than anything.
We have.
But then he met, huh?
No, go ahead, bro.
No, I was saying then he met Richie Rich. Then he just then it turned into something different.
That's that other side of Oakland.
Yeah, that other side of Oakland, right?
For sure. Shout out to Rich, man. Hold your head. So man, it's crazy. Like right now, we have the Pac movie coming out. We had N.W.A. We had Biggie. I'm sure a lot more will come if the Tupac movie is as successful as people expect it to be. And then you have Unsung telling all of these different things. And you were part of one of the biggest groups of that era. Like, I don't think people understand how huge Digital Underground was for many years, from doing movies to being, I think Sex Packets has to be the first album I ever heard of where a record store opened up on midnight. The first rap album. Record stores opened up on midnight, so people could buy it like immediately and not wait till 9 a.m. the next morning for this is back when we actually had record stores and places where you could buy records other than Target and Best Buy. But yeah, I mean, talk a little bit about how do you feel like people recognize that legacy and all the hits y'all had and everything that you did that was trailblazing?
I think the people that remember it, that experienced it, do, and a lot of times I'm surprised that even younger people realize that they heard of us. But then I'm also surprised that there's so many Tupac fans, but don't realize that he was actually in Digital Underground.
Right.
And as years go by, we forget or things get lost. So, I've seen on TV where they was talking about one-hit wonders, and we popped up, and I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what was same song? What was Kiss You Back? What was Humpty Dance? What was
Right.
We were more than just a one-hit wonder. But it doesn't really bother me. The one thing that I will say is that I do see our influence And even if it's not our influence, our vision in a lot of music that came after us. Like,
Yeah.
I always tell, I used to talk to Shock and tell him like, Outkast is what we were before them. You know what I mean? How uh, Andre was like the eclectic, people always say like the weird guy, and Big Boy was kind of like the straight guy or whatever.
Right.
That was kind of like how me and Shock approached things, or that's how we were or perceived at the time. And then there's other acts that came out, and we were the first people to really take funk samples like Parliament, stuff like that, use it in a way that we were accepted into, the Parliament funkadelic community,
Right.
accepted as one of them, as opposed to just some hip hop guys that are using their music. They were like, we're taking the funk and making new funk, to the point to where George Clinton calls, Shock one of his sons.
Right.
They have that type of relationship. So we our place in history can it can't be taken away from us. You know what I mean? And I know that we're a part of hip hop history. So, however people want to remember us or don't remember us, I'm fine with it because, I know what we did.
For sure, and it's ironic that you brought up the Outkast comparison because we had Ray Murray from Organized Noise on probably like a year ago, and he was talking about how listening to "I Get Around" was a large influence on, I believe, the single Southern Playalistic, like from the drums and just like the whole vibe of that song. They took that.
Yeah, I could hear the drums, definitely.
Yeah, most definitely. So it's ironic they said that.
Yeah. Speaking of "I Get Around," man, it's like I always remember that video. I always had, because like I think the only video that can be compared to that might be Nelly's Tip Drill, just as far as just like the whole party vibe of it. I wanted to know like how much wildness was captured on camera and how much wildness was left off camera. Was it really going down like that, like we saw on camera?
Oh man, it was going down. It was so much fun. I think up until that day, shooting a Do What You Like video was probably one of the funnest days that I can remember until we did that video. And then after that was like the funnest day ever. And I knew that if the video showed half the fun we had that day, then it was going to be all right. Because at the time, Pac was upset at Interscope, and he really wasn't. He basically was saying fuck Interscope and fuck everything, as he gets at times, because that album wasn't doing too well at the time, because How If You Hear Me was the first single,
Right.
which I told him not to put out as his first single, but it was flopping basically. And so he was upset at Interscope. So he's like, man, I'm just doing this shit, whatever. And I was like, well, when you go to edit it, he's like, man, I ain't doing none of that stuff. And I was like, well, if it shows half the fun that we had, it's going to be all right. And it was. So that just goes to show you. Now, as far as behind the scenes, when you shoot videos, every so often you take breaks, right?
Right.
It was so many women. And what I later found out is during every break, Pop was taking a different girl, to his little space and doing what he do.
That's crazy.
Even the one, if you look at the video, the girl that was in the hot tub with him with the little gray bikini thing, he jumped on her too.
I figured that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did the thing.
Sure.
And that's the same girl that was in Pumps in the Bumps video with the horn.
Oh, that's crazy. The hip hop facts.
Yeah. Zoom, zoom, zoom. And
The Rex in Effect.
Pump shaker.
Yeah, Rump Shaker.
Yeah, Rex in Effect. Yeah, with the horn and at the beach, whatever.
Wow. Now I'm gonna have to go back on YouTube and look at both of the videos.
Yeah, I believe that's her. That's what I was told.
That's wild. And it's funny, man. Like, I Get Around is one of them songs where it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you're at a party, I Get Around is going to get played at least once.
Right.
To this day, it's still a huge song. What do you think about, man? Like, it's been 20 years. Everybody's had conspiracies, yada, yada, yada. What do you think when people still say the Pac is alive? We just had something come out like a week ago with some dude with a Nike hoodie on with a full beard or something that they were saying was Tupac now in 2016.
You said, what do I think about this?
Yeah, like when people keep saying he alive.
It just goes to show you how much we don't want to let go. That we'll grab on anything just with a sliver of chance that he just might be, you know. But that's how beloved he was. That people just, even 20 years later, they still don't want to believe him, so, which speaks volumes, you know, to what he was and what he meant to an entire, not just our generation, but many generations.
Right.
Like being that you was, with him while he was alive, you had your own career going on, and even now today you kind of playing a role as a hip hop, historian or documentarian with your show. Like, do you think that younger artists need to know who Tupac was and what he meant? Because like right now, I don't know if you're paying attention, you kind of have like this hip hop civil war between old and new, and the younger artists are like, well, nigga, I don't even know any Tupac songs. Why do I need to know any Tupac songs? Like where do you rest on that? Do you think Tupac is an artist that, artists need to be studying if they're going to dare call themselves a rapper or a hip hop artist or anything like that?
Well, I just feel like if you really want to call yourself knowledgeable, or just if you want to be great, or in most professions, when you call yourself want to be great at something, normally you learn the history of it, meaning like doctors learn about other, past procedures, and lawyers have to learn court cases that set precedents. You understand what I'm saying? Like basketball players and football players, if you play in the NFL, you should know who Walter Payton is. If you tell me you want to be an NBA player but you don't know who Dr. J is, I'm gonna look at you funny. It's just certain things that you should know, and you shouldn't be proud of ignorance. It's understandable if you're 19. If Pac died 20 years ago, it's quite possible that a young 19-year-old might not know who he is, but to say it proudly, like, man, I'm not familiar with him, maybe I should go read up on this person.
Yeah.
And you can't say he's never heard of Tupac. But for him to say he doesn't know the music, okay, that's, I'm not gonna shoot him for it, But when you say you don't, and then you have no desire to want to know what came before you, then I just think that's unfortunate. And then I really respect your opinion on anything, because you don't even know if what you're talking about has already been done before.
Very true. That is extremely true, man.
As far as the whole civil war between the youth and the new ones and the old ones, I think that us as older artists and people that have been in hip hop for so long, instead of chastising and always saying what they need to do, because all you do is push them further away. It's like your kids. If you always getting on their head about something, they'll just start to really break away from you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
At some point in trying to get them to understand us, we have to be willing to try to understand them as well. And so, like I said, it's unfortunate when you hear the way that Lil Yachty and some of these young cats are talking, but it is what it is. It's their life to live.
No,
Just like they say, our stuff is old and whatever. That's the same thing that we said about our parents playing us the Whispers and James Brown or whoever it was.
Right.
You know, we like this is our thing. We got our own thing. So they got their own thing. Having to think, now when it comes to lyricism and stuff like that, it's a lot of trash. But if that's all they know. More power to them.
Now, speaking of listening to other artists, studying other artists, I was curious. Who was Pac actually a fan of? If you can remember that, like, who were some people that Pac was just like, oh man, I gotta go out and get this person's tape, or I'm a fan of this person, or even some music that we might not even expected him to be in love with.
Scarface. That was his favorite. That's who he actually. And I'm surprised a lot of people don't realize it, but I used to always get on him. I'm like, why are you trying to sound like Scarface? If you listen to Apocalypse Now, he even picked up some of Scarface's cadence, because he liked him so much.
That's wild. Yeah, and I'm listening in my head right now, and I can hear it 100%.
Yeah, but I heard it all the way. But obviously, because I was with him all the time.
Right.
But it was obvious.
For sure.
But yeah, he was a huge fan of Faith, and I know he was like, when we did our first show we did with the Ghetto Boys, he was fanning out. Never forget it. And I was teasing him about it, but yeah, that was his guy. He listened to other stuff. He listened to all the hip hop at a time. I remember when we took him on his first tour, he actually used to listen to Mariah Carey, which I thought was
interesting.
Word.